morning. I want to welcome you guys to the Crossings Church. I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm going to go ahead and get this situated here. All right, so I got a few announcements before I go ahead and get started. I have to make a list because last time I kind of goofed it up. One, we got membership one-on-one coming up May 30th. It's from 9 to 2. It's this Saturday, I believe. Lunch is going to be provided. This is a great opportunity for you to understand why our church functions how it does. See where, why do we do the things we do and where it comes from in the scripture. So that's a good thing to come to. We also have VBS. We have a work day, actually. So tomorrow from 9 to 2, we're going to be up at the building getting things prepared for our VBS. So if it's 9 to 2, you don't have to be there the whole time, but if you can stop by and be able to help, it would be really good so we can get things done, make sure things are done well for these kids. And if you have any questions or, concerns, you can talk to Maggie. She's right there. Go ahead, give a good old wave. I was going to put her face on the screen so everyone will know, but apparently she did not like that. So you can talk to her. Also, we have a women's Bible series, Rooted and Radiant. I heard the first one went really well, which is awesome. This is just a time for the ladies to get together and just get rooted in God's Word. And so if you're a lady, this is the time for you to come at 6:30 to 8:30, be with other women who are striving to grow in their knowledge and understanding and obedience to God. So really cool. And then, of course, we have VBS June 1st to the 4th from 6 to 8:30, ages 3 and then to 6th grade. So it's a great opportunity. If you know anybody, invite them. This is good for them to learn, to understand, and get a kind of a grasp of who God is and how he works. So I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we'll jump right in. Dear Heavenly Father, God, I'm so glad that you are here with us, God, and you give us this opportunity to get to connect with each other, to talk, to love, to share, to serve, but also to get your word, God. And God, I'm so grateful that you've given us this book, your word, to allow us to know how to live life according to your will. So God, I just pray that you be with all of our hearts, God. Soften our hearts, fill us with the Spirit so we can hear and discern what you want us to hear and discern, God. Be with the words that come out of my mouth, God. Let them not be of me, but of you, God, and that everyone who hears are able to process it and apply it to their lives. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, so obviously we've been going through a series related to VBS called The Castle of Courage, How VBS Can Fortify the Crossings Church. Now we are in week 2. This is week 2. So what I will be talking about is courage to trust God when it doesn't make sense. So something really cool that I kind of appreciate is inventors. I have friends, and there's been times where I'm like, man, if we can just invent something and people like it and buy it, we'll be set for life kind of mentality. And a few inventors that I want to mention today is the Wright brothers and Thomas Edison. Is anyone familiar with the Wright brothers? Right, they did the plane, right? So you say what? I missed something. I mean, everyone says something at the same time. But the Wright brothers, their big deal is let's get men and women in the air. Like, let's fly. Let's do this. They from 1899 to 1903, that's roughly like 4 years. They're trying their best to be able to fly and get the first powered plane in the sky. And then Thomas Edison, he's the one who creates the light bulb, right? So obviously he was successful, as you see. There's lights everywhere. But something to understand is these guys had failed many times. They had many tests upon tests upon tests. 4 years, thousands of failures, thousands of attempts. But they were persistent. They kept going. They wanted to make it, their dreams pretty much come true. All right. And unfortunately, the good thing is obviously they succeeded, but if they stopped at some point, if they at some thousand time test, they decided, okay, we gotta pack the bags. Like, we can't do this. It's not working out. Or the Wright brothers, they probably injured themselves many times attempting to fly, and they could have gave up, but they didn't. And we're going to talk about Joshua, the Israelites, and the wall of Jericho, because in the Bible, they face a similar situation where, God is calling them to do something, and they're going to have to be patient. They're going to have to learn to trust God. And if you haven't heard of the story of the walls of Jericho, basically you have Joshua. He's the new leader of the Israelites, right? He's speaking to the Israelites on behalf of God. And God gives him a message. He says, hey, we're here at the wall. Right over that wall is the promised land. The land I have promised you is right over this wall. And here's the strategy. I want you guys to walk. And that's pretty much, it. He's like, I want you to walk, but I want you to walk around the walls for 7 days, right? And he gives specific instructions for them to walk. And this is different than what they're used to. If you don't understand, the Israelites at the time, before they got to the wall, they were walking through the wilderness. Why? Because they goofed up and weren't obedient, so they had to learn some things. But during that time, they faced battles. And a lot of these battles, they won, right? And a lot of these battles were military combat. So in their, they're victory, but then they're facing something they haven't faced before, and now God is calling them to handle it in a way they're not expecting, right? So one of the hardest things in life is doing what God says, especially when the plan doesn't really make sense to us, or we don't see immediate results. And as we read through this, you'll see why the Israelites will probably be kind of confused on the plan. So point 1, God's instructions won't always match human logic. God's instructions won't always match human logic. It says in Joshua 6, 1 through 5, it says, now the gates of Jericho, there you go. Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its kings and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. Now, if I was a part of this group where we're hitting this wall and we get this instruction, I'm not gonna lie, I might be the person that's asking a few questions, right? Like, okay, I hear this plan, but you mentioned that we've already secured Jericho. Like, are we like is it done? Are they defeated? You're saying that in verse 2 he says, "See, I've delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and fighting men." So I'm like, well, I see this wall, so maybe there's a plague and it took out the king and the fighting men, and all we got to do is find a way through the wall, right? Like, how have we already secured the victory? Right? And then he says other things like, okay, we're going to march around this wall. I'm like, oh my gosh, marching around this wall. Like, how many times do we got to march around this wall? Like we just been through the wilderness walking, Lord. If we're right here, can we just kind of make it happen? Let's just go through. Why does it have to be, 6 times, 6 days? Like, we're screaming at the wall, God. Like I know that you parted the sea because you made the waters and you provided manna and you did all these things. But God, this is a 40-foot stone wall made by man. I don't think we haven't seen you deal with that, right? There's a lot of questions that the Israelites may have, but it's very important to understand that God has a plan and he calls us to trust him. He calls us to rely on him. And some things that we can kind of learn as human beings is there's a way that we think, there's a way that we move, that God is calling us to trust him and move in the way he calls us to. So one thing that we can understand about us human beings is we don't need to understand everything before we're obedient. God has called us to do things, and it doesn't mean that we need to know exactly what it is, everything about it, the 100% of the plan. God just says, hey, I gave you an instruction. You don't need to know everything. Just know me, and I'm good, and I got a plan that you should follow, right? And something about Joshua is Joshua actually did a pretty good job at following God and listening to instruction. I think that's due to him seeing God be faithful as they came out of Egypt and as they walked in the wilderness, right? So he's very obedient. He's understanding what God's plan is, and I think it's because he trusts him. And as humans, we got to understand that the capacity of us, the capacity to trust or to rely on God is directly connected to how close we are to God. It's easy. It's the more you trust someone or something, it's easier to just go along with things, or easier to rely on it, or easier to not, maybe I got a better plan, right? And God's calling us to say, hey, if you want your capacity of trust, if you want to grow in understanding me, you need to get close to me. You need to connect with me, right? Another thing is we can confuse human effort with divine accomplishment. So something with the Israelites is before they got here, they were winning a lot of battles, right? And a lot of that was military combat. Now imagine you were slaves in Egypt, and then you come out of Egypt, you're walking through the wilderness, you don't have a set home, you're just going and going and going. And then you face these armies and these bandits and all these different things, and you're successful. A part of me, if I was a part of that army, I'm thinking like, man, don't mess with me. I'm a killer out here, Like we've won so many different battles. The next ones they're probably shivering in fear. They probably heard about us. Like we're tough, we're gangsters. You see what we've accomplished, right? But the thing about that is God brings them to this wall, and now they're kind of in a weird spot. They're like, well, we can't punch the wall, like get our way through this wall just anyhow. We got to come up with a game plan. And I believe God uses this wall to remind them, hey, I need to humble you for a second. I want you to understand that the only way you're going to get through this is me. And all those successes and victories you had, don't get it twisted. It wasn't because of your effort. It was because I was leading you. It was because of my power. And he does that to help them understand, hey, you humble yourselves. And then another thing is sometimes we can think that we know better, right? My kids are kind of at that stage where they're always asking why, and they're saying, well, I wanted to do it this way, and I'm just like, well, that's a great idea, but not. I just know better. Trust me, trust your father, right? So the truth is, we just don't know better. God sees things way differently than we do, right? I like to use that the analogy of a painter, right? When you're painting a picture or whatever, different kind of whatever painting. You can draw that, and then imagine there's an ant just crawling on that painting. The ant only sees, a very small section of that painting. It can't get a full understanding of the picture. But the painter, right, the creator of the paint of the canvas here, he sees it. He knows the plan. He knows what's going on, but the ant does not. And that's the same thing with us. We're like that ant. See, we can see what's in this room, but God sees the whole building, right? So we got to understand that we just don't know better. And when we understand ourselves and how we may think, it can help us start to align with what God thinks and understanding how God communicates and what he understands. So some things that we can learn about God. God's absolute certainty. Like he knows, he understands, and he understands everything. He has the big picture. When it says in verse 2, then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its kings and its fighting men. What God is doing when he's communicating to Joshua is he's inviting him to his thinking, right? God sees something that Joshua may not be seeing, right? God says, hey, they're delivered to your hands, like the king and all their fighting men. It's done. This battle has already won, right? So God is inviting Joshua to not just look at the walls like, oh, he sees something, but God sees something different. He's saying, hey, look, see what I see, right? Imagine those walls are already knocked down. Imagine that the king has already been delivered in your hand, because that's what it is. That's what I said. He invites us to his thinking. It says in Isaiah 55, 8-9, I know Proverbs is probably ahead on this verse, but we're going to look at Isaiah 55, 8-9 first. It says, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. See, God has, in comparison, there's no comparison when it comes to how we think and what we understand. God's on another level. God has a bigger and broader perspective than we do. So we should trust in him. We should align our thinking with him. Another thing is God's superiority over all powers. See, in the Israelites' mind, they're thinking, man, this wall, we haven't dealt with something like this. Are we going to be able to handle this? But we got to be very clear when it comes to powers and authorities. At the end of the day, God is the highest. He is the supreme. And there's nothing that he will see and he will be like, oh, snap, I didn't expect that. No, the wall that's built is on the earth that he's created, right? It's small, it's minuscule, it's little, right? So we got to understand that God, he's the supreme power. There's nothing bigger than him. Another thing that God would want us to understand is God emphasizes faith over human strategy. This kind of plan is like, you really kind of can put you in a place of wonder. Like, man, is this gonna work? God, is this the plan? Like, this is not what we've been doing in the past. But church, I do want to encourage you and challenge you. Do we understand what having faith in God's plan looks like over our own plans? Like, do we really think about that? Do we really understand what it means to trust God? And I'm not saying when you go through something that's hard or difficult, or there's a relationship that's is challenging, and you're just like, I'm just going to trust God is going to do something. No, there's a trust in God that leads to action, right? See, when we trust in God, it means relying on him as our only true source of wisdom, strength, and power. In everything we think, we feel, or do, we're choosing to trust in God. Do we do that? And what makes this hard sometimes for us is that there is a wisdom, there is a strength, there is a power, there are thoughts and feelings and actions, but they're not God's, they're our own. And a lot of times we trust that a little bit more than God's wisdom and God's power and God's strength. We rely on our feelings and our thoughts and our comfort over what God says, over God's plan, right? And God's calling us out of that. Proverbs 3:5-6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your path. Make straight your paths. See, we got to understand, like, God says, hey, you got to trust me with everything. With everything. If you want your path to be straight, if you want to hit the mark, if you want to go in the right direction, you got to put all your faith in me. And sometimes that looks like denying your wisdom and your powers or your strengths that you think you have, or telling yourself no. That is hard to do sometimes, is tell yourself no. Layla, even this morning, Layla saw, my wife baked a bunch of cookies for my birthday, and Layla was like, oh, I want a cookie. And Emily says, no, you can't have a cookie. And in her mind, it doesn't register. Well, I want a cookie, so why can't I have a cookie, right? It's just like it doesn't make sense to her why she's being told no. But it's probably best for you not to have cookies early in the morning, right? But she doesn't get that yet, right? But God understands things that we don't. Even though God's plan doesn't make sense, we should still obey God. Not just once, not just a few times, but we should obey him consistently, which leads us to our second point. Courage is consistent obedience even when nothing is happening. It says in Joshua 6:6-14, it says, so Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the army, advance, march around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests, who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time, the trumpets were sounding. But Joshua had commanded the army, "Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout." So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the army returned to camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. All right. So I so badly wish we could just be there and hear Joshua speaking to the Israelites and kind of feel what does it feel like to be wandering in the wilderness, and you don't have a home, you're just pitching tents and camps for all these years, and you're this close to the promised land, but now we got to march in circles before we get in it. Is this a joke? Is this a game? So I want us to use our imagination today. So I would like for us to all close our eyes and kind of imagine that we're the Israelites, right? Really try to envision this. And today, the voice of Joshua will speak to you, AKA me for now. So I don't know how he sounds, but I'm the best that we got right now. All right, so we're imagining this, right? All right, Israel, gather in close and listen carefully. I know what all of you see. Those walls are massive, thick stone, armed soldiers, a city completely shut tight. And I know what many of you are expecting from me right now. You're waiting for a battle strategy. You're waiting for weapons. You're waiting for me to tell you how we're going to attack. But here's what the Lord has commanded us to do. Tomorrow, we are going to walk around the city. Yep, that's pretty much it. We're going to march around the walls and then return to camp. You will not shout. You will not speak. You will simply just walk. Now, some of you are looking at me like I've lost my mind, but I have not. The Lord is with us, because this doesn't feel like a victory. This feels kind of embarrassing, but remember, the Lord is with us. The people of Jericho will stand on these walls watching us, and man, they're going to be scared. They're going to be terrified, or they might be laughing at us or mocking us. Whichever the case is, God is with us. And after we finish walking tomorrow, the walls will still be standing. Then the next day, they will walk again, and they're probably still going to be standing. But there's another day we're going to walk, and, they're probably still going to be standing. And eventually, your feet will hurt, to be honest. Let's be real. You don't got the best footwear. Your patience will wear thin, and some of you will begin wondering, what are we even doing? Why are we doing this? Because there's nothing natural about this. I understand it's hard to see the progress. We're in day 4 now. There's not a crack in the wall. There's no sign that anything is changing. Just another silent walk around the city. And I know it still looks impossible, but God has a plan, and we just need to follow it. Now, go ahead and open your eyes and kind of think about that. That doesn't really feel very we're about to do this. We're really not doing much. Who's going to make this happen? How is this going to happen, God? Right? And something really cool to understand is when I was reading this passage, it doesn't say that God communicates to Joshua and says, hey, this is the plan. 6 days, 7 days, walls come down. But it doesn't say that Joshua communicated to the Israelites how many days they were going to march. So we know it's going to be 7 days, but imagine you didn't know. It's just one day at a time. Are we going to walk another 40 years around here? Or is it going to be a couple weeks? What is it? But God is calling them to be faithful, trust, and be obedient. All right? And I know some of us can feel like we're at that sixth day where it's we're close, but we don't understand how close. There's times where we've been trying to be consistent with our praying, right? Or our serving. We're fighting for marriages, and it sometimes feels like we're not seeing movement, right? Or we have a family that we really love and care for, and we want them to know about God. Or we try to just stay faithful, and it's just like, man, I'm going. God, does this get easy? Is this what is, following you is just this? Like, this season is hard. When can I get out of it? Or when you're trying to share the gospel with your friends and family, right? A relationship with God is good, and you want that for the people you love. You want that for your community. You want that for people that you come into contact with. But sometimes it doesn't seem like, maybe they want it, or you don't see the needle moving in their hearts or with their actions, right? But let's hear what Galatians 6:9 says. It says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." See, it's so important. Like, God knows that this is going to be tough. This is going to be hard. We're going to go through tough seasons. But he's encouraging us to not give up and continue to do what is good and not be tired of doing what is good. Because honestly, like, when you decide to follow God, like, it can be exhausting. And there's also times where you're like, man, I don't know if I can keep going, or I can keep doing this. Or there's times where you think about your old life and you're tempted to revert to your old ways. Like, oh man, I'm going through this tough season. Maybe if I can get just a little bit of comfort from the things in my past, maybe that will get me through that. Or maybe I can slip up here or there just to kind of ease the tension. But we got to understand that God is doing a work in us and around us when we choose to be faithful. Right? He's doing something good, and we may not understand it, we may not see it right away, but God is always at work, even when we're not. It says in James 1:22, it says, "But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourself." Now, what this is saying is, there's times where we love to come to church and hear a good message. Or we turn on that podcast that really motivates us, or we listen to that one song that always gets my heart in the right place, right? Or we might even listen to we might just get that time in prayer in our word, and we get a message. But and I'm so glad God put this in here. It's very important to be careful, because a lot of times you can consume a lot of good content or material like that is genuinely healthy and rooted in God's word, but you might be deceiving yourself thinking that you are being obedient to God. There's times where I can hear something and be challenged, but if I don't do anything, I've been fooled. It's crazy, but like Satan, the enemy, can try to use God's word against you. He did it to Jesus in the garden. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you your own words and see how you handle that," right? So whenever you're coming to church, or you're get in your word, make sure you're taking the time to find out, how can I apply this? It is useless if you don't apply God's word, right? That's how true life is brought forward. And something cool is the campus ministry here that started in SIUE a while back understood this assignment. A lot of the guys, and I'm just kind of thinking of a few of the guys, but when we started back in that campus ministry, we knew what God called us to do on this campus, to love the college kids that are on this campus, to show them what God has in store, and be praying for their hearts that God reveals himself in a way that they turn to him, right? And it reminds me of a old friend of ours. His name is Juan Mario Diaz. And this dude, it's really cool. A lot of the older guys know this guy, but basically he was someone that we connected with very early on when we started the campus ministry, and we just connected so well. Like, he was doing well in school, all that, but he was really wanting to know about God. He started coming to church. He came to small groups. He came to cross chat, and he was very eager to learn. And though we had fun just being friends, there was value to our friendship, because we were just obedient to God. God says, love them by showing them me, right? Like, don't just leave the friendship just you and this person. Make sure that I'm a part of that because I have something greater for them than just a friendship, right? And we studied the Bible with him, and at some point, he just kind of started, drifting. We noticed that he didn't come to church as much, and then we noticed that he wasn't coming to cross chat. Then we noticed that he was getting involved with some other things that kind of, it seemed like he was becoming very distant. And I know a lot of us guys were wondering, like, man, like what's happening? Like, we're being obedient, but the needle is not moving anymore. Like, he doesn't seem like he's interested. And, long story short, he decided, like, he's not coming around anymore. There's other important things to him. And it was like, dang, man, even when we were obedient, like, it just, like, our effort wasn't enough. But when you fast forward, it's really cool because that same friend actually reached out to Reggie, and Reggie actually shared this with a lot of us guys who were reaching out to him. But he reached out to him and he said, hey, man, I think it was like wishing him happy birthday, but then he said, hey, I just want you to know I recently gave my life to Christ. Like, and keep in mind, he moved from Illinois to Florida to get close with family, right? So we're like, oh, man, like, what are we going to do? And it was a good reminder that it's not us. It's nothing special about us. We just got to be obedient to God. It's Jesus that worked through that. So he messages him and says, hey, yeah, I recently gave my life to Christ, and I really appreciate y'all being a part of that journey. And I'm like, man, when Reggie sent me that text, I was like, bro, I love that dude. I want to see good for him. I want him to have a right relationship with God. And though he's not here, we're going to see him up there, And it's really encouraging to see that, and that leads us to our third point. God brings breakthrough in his timing, not ours. It says in Joshua 6:15 through 20, it says, on the seventh day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day, they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. All the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. See, that is amazing, because, man, what if they stopped walking on day 6? And just was like, Joshua, we had enough. This is ridiculous. Like, there's no changes. There's nothing happening. Like, we need to go back to our normal plan. We need to go back to plan B, right? But God says, hey, like, trust in my timing. Just be obedient. I'm the one with the power here, and I'm allowing you to be a part of this, right? Hebrews 11:30, it says, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days, right? And it's cool when you think about this. Even at day 7, when the walls come down, you probably couldn't help but to ask, like, but why 7 days? Why does it why couldn't this happen day 1 or 2, right? We're here, let's get it happen, get it done, right? And it's kind of cool. And there's some historical facts and theology that's, 7 is the number of completeness. So like it kind of, there's a 7 trumpets, 7 priests, 7, that was that number of completeness. But at the same time, the reason why God extended that is there was something else on the heart of God. There was something else on the mind of God. And that's us. That was the Israelites and the state of their heart. See, it's easy to, hey, yeah, I'm God. I can make this happen. I'll make it crumble. You get your promise. But God is way more, is a lot deeper than that. He sees the state of our hearts. He sees the state of the Israelites' heart, and he's like, hey, like, I'm going to use this 7 days to build your faith. I'm going to use these 7 days so you can trust in me, right? And he's thinking of them. He's thinking of us, right? He's not just, yeah, I got the power, boom, 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 make it happen. No, I want to build something in you. I want you to learn to trust me. I want you to learn to wait. I want you to learn to be patient because it is good for you, right? God didn't need it. He can do whatever he wants, but he's thinking about us. It says in Psalm 27, it says, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our Jesus God, or the Lord our God. Now, when it says chariots and horses, this basically this idea of us like humans and the soldiers, they rely on these maybe human advancement when it comes to technology. And back then, chariots was a big deal. But then horses was also like an idea of wealth. Like if you owned a horse back then, you were doing pretty good, right? Like you were doing really well. But God comes in and says, hey, some people trust in those things. I call you to trust in me, right? This won't fade. This won't fail. Trust in me. So something we need to understand is the miracle doesn't just happen at the beginning. It comes after a sustained obedience and a building of faithfulness. See, sometimes we want the miracles and we want the results and we want the breakthroughs to happen on our time when we want it to. But God says, hey, I work on the 7th day. I have something in store for you. I'm building something in you. I'm planning something. So we need to choose to trust him, not ourselves. So I want to encourage us to remember not to quit when we're on day 6. Make sure you complete your obedience to God. Your breakthrough is right around the corner. And the really cool thing is, I love the fact that we're doing VBS. When I was younger, I did VBS, and honestly, like I remember it being a lot of fun. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, there was some truth and value there that like I fully understand, and I can look back and be like, man, God was working, before I can even understand what he was doing or working in my life. And I want to encourage us to, think of this VBS, especially if you know children in that age range or families that, need some hope. I really want to encourage y'all to invite, to share, to serve those people, and give them an opportunity to get to know God, and get these kids an opportunity to see something different. Because in reality, and I love the story how there's Rahab in the story where she trusts in God, in the God of the Israelites, and God sees that, and her where she lived was a part of the wall, and crazy enough, when the walls came down, she was good, right? Coincidence? No, God working, obviously. But it's cool how like God takes his time and he builds our heart, but then he also gives. He loves everyone. He gives everyone opportunity. He does that with Rahab. So when it comes to the VBS, when we think about these kids, like God is doing a work no matter what, but he invites us to invite and serve and love these kids in a way that will give them a bit better hope in the future. It did that for me, honestly, and I didn't think of it at the time, but like I look back and there's a lot of good things that I got from that. But in reality, this 1 week can change a kid's entire eternity, right? So what can we do to love our community and love the kids in our community? It's not just, there's a lot of VBSs out there, and our prayer is that every single VBS does that, loves the kids, reach out to them, and give them something different and better. So I want to encourage us to understand that courage is choosing to obey God again and again until the walls finally fall down. Now I want you guys to pull, I usually forget this, but I want you guys to go ahead and, there's a cardstock piece of paper in your notes or your bulletin. I want to encourage you to pull that out. If you're just now visiting with us or you've been coming around for a while, I want to encourage you to get connected. And connecting can look like getting coffee, one-on-one class, a Bible study, coming to some of the events or retreats or a cross set that we have, and really try to plug in. Like I believe that God has you here for a reason, And I know for a fact that he's got a bright future and a hope for you. And this card can be an opportunity to, get connected and get to know somebody and see what God has in store for you. So I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then the worship team will come back, and then we'll sing and wrap up. Dear Heavenly Father,